Hello, welcome, or welcome back. Welcome to me trying to find a good place in this house to record. I'm currently in my dining room in between the bar and my bedroom. That's my bedroom. I kind of feel like I'm sitting at a desk and you've come in for a performance review. I'd like to thank you for coming in today. It's been a minute. In my last video, I had kind of indicated that I'd been having trouble just kind of like keeping up, and it's been a lot has been going on. So I was up and about today. I went to physical therapy earlier today because every day my body is trying to come up with new ways to betray me. It is the last day of November, and I actually, believe it or not, have some plans for December. So it is kind of a now or never, last minute sort of situation, which is actually kind of where I live. Speaking of where I live, you will notice, of course, that I am in a new place. This is my house. I am probably, you'll see different parts of it as I try to find a good location from which to film. I don't really know, as far as like light and sound, what the best configuration is going to be. I am here to do some sort of catch up. I don't want to just continue on into December pretending like I didn't have wrap-ups for the last 3 months, because I don't want to sit in front of this camera for 3 days straight. I needed to find a way to kind of narrow it down. So what I am going to do is essentially talk about the arcs that I read over the last few months. This is going to be September, October, November. So I'm going to talk about the arcs that I read, which there are 5 arcs. And then I'm just going to briefly talk about like some of the hits. Some of my favorites, some of the books that I read that kind of stayed with me. And I think that there are fewer than 10. So ideally, this shouldn't take a super long time. Like, I'm not necessarily worried about recording a giant ass video. I should be able to edit it into something palatable. Okay, so let's do it. Let's get into it. Arcs first. Such a Pretty Smile by Christy DeMeester. This is going to be out January 2022, published by St. Martin's Press. It is a horror with split perspective as well as dual timeline. The main character is Lila, who's 13 years old. She's just an awkward, newly minted teenager who's just kind of desperate for reassurance, for validation, both from her parents, who are absent and overprotective, respectively, and also from her best friend, who is not very nice to her, actually. She's also beginning to hear this kind of like inner voice, who is getting like louder and more aggressive and kind of like mean and sometimes violent, and it's starting to worry her, and so she's trying to deal with this voice and then also trying to navigate her social life and her home life. Oh, I'm sorry, I meant to say content warning for murder and sexual violence, particularly violence against minor children. Several girls are found severely mutilated and assaulted, and these murders are causing her mother, Caroline, to become even more stressed and overprotective. You will also hear noises. Noises travel very weird in this house. Again, it's very old, kind of big, a lot of empty space. We don't really have enough furniture to fill it yet. So you will hear like walking and echoes, and probably my cat screaming. My cat Brenda just loves wandering around and yelling because she likes the way that it sounds. So apologies in advance if you hear any of that. Anyway, so Caroline, Lila's mother, is very, very stressed out because these murders are very much like murders that occurred, I want to say around 15 years before, like in 2009, when Caroline was living in New Orleans. The serial killer who was active at that time, who was called the Cur. So she's getting very nervous, and also Caroline has her own perspective, but it is in 2009. So you go back and forth between Lila and Caroline herself is dealing with an inner voice of sorts that is also kind of aggressive and violent. And so you get to see how each one deals with her emotions and what they manifest, sometimes like actually literally manifest. I really liked it. The plot was well paced. I really, really enjoy how the characters were written. I feel like the main issue that I had, which is very similar to the issue that I had with The Hollow Places by T. Kingfisher, which was that the antagonist, villain, monster, whatever, is not described well enough, or it's described, but it's described in kind of like a vague way. And I understand that this is a question of taste, but for me, if a villain or baddie is not described in a way that I can actually visualize them, in a way that I can picture them, I can't rightly be too afraid of it. There is R, I guess. I don't want to try to describe who the antagonist is because I feel like that'll give a little bit of it away. But suffice it to say that they are described physically, but in a way that's kind of confusing, or at least it was to me. I also feel like the feminist metaphor of like patriarchal control over women's bodies and behaviors to be a little bit on the nose. But again, that's probably also personal. All in all, I liked it. I don't know. I think that if you're into horror thrillers, especially with kind of like a feminist bent or feminist message, I think that you'll like it. The White Ship, Conquest, Anarchy, and the Wrecking of Henry I's Dream by Charles Spencer. This is, as I'm sure you can gather from the name, historical nonfiction, and it is very, very much my jam. The White Ship is the name of the ship that William Atheling, the sole legitimate son of Henry I, along with dozens of others, died in a journey, during a journey from France to England. And the subsequent death of Henry I in 1135 kind of kicked off what was essentially a civil war that lasted from Henry I's death to 1153, during which Matilda, Henry I's daughter, and Stephen, Henry I's nephew, are in this kind of like protracted war because each one believes to be the rightful heir to England. I'm going to preface by saying this book was great. I absolutely loved it. I did find the title a little misleading, but it's not a huge deal. And this is also something that you'll kind of expect in especially popular historical nonfiction because it is a good idea if you're going to publish a book that you go with a name that is more attractive or going to sell more than the slightly boring but more accurate name. But again, it's not that big a deal. It's written very well. It's a relatively quick read, despite how long it was. According to the NetGalley description, it was like 860 pages, but I actually don't think it's quite that long. Anyway, I say that the title is slightly misleading because it covers a much broader range, a much broader period than just the anarchy, which is what the, in British history, what that civil war was referred to as the anarchy. it actually goes as far back as William the Conqueror, like his life and his diplomatic relations, and then the conquest. And then after that actually goes into the succession following the death of William the Conqueror. So it's William Rufus, his eldest son. And then, of course, the succession and reign of Henry I himself. And then, relative to the first three men, you actually get very little about William Atheling. Though I think that is probably due to the lack of sources. I don't want to say lack, but there are fewer sources available about William the Atheling and his life because he was so young compared to the other men. So it's kind of like told in sections. So you have reign of England prior to the birth and death of William the Atheling. There's a little bit about William here. And then the majority of the text is actually about the anarchy. As I said, it is well told. It is very comprehensive. There is a lot to it. And as I said, I enjoyed it. And I think it would be good for a lot of fans of history. If you like medieval history, British history, political, military history, I think it would be really good for you. Oh, I didn't mention that it is already out. It came out in September of 2021. So if you're into that, if that sounds interesting at all, I would recommend it. The Dark Queens, The Bloody Rivalry That Forged the Medieval World by Shelley Puhak. This is going to be out February of 2022, published by Bloomsbury Press. Bloomsbury. Now, this is an historical account of Brunhild and Fredegund, who are the wives of two different grandsons of Clovis the First. Now, I'm not too terribly familiar with like 4th through 6th century European history, but that didn't seem to matter. It was, again, it was very, very well told. It utilized a lot of different sources, and despite all of the wolves and the stands and the visses and like all the different Merovingian names that were kind of difficult to kind of keep straight, it was very, very easy to follow. It was very, very narrative. There's a lot going on. There's you know, some of the more diplomatic like letter writing stuff, and there's like a murder and political intrigue. All of it's there. What I like so much about this book, other than the fact that it actually reads like a pretty suspenseful story, is that the perspective from which it is told. You see what Brunhild and Fredegund had to do, so it's not like just the way that they ruled, or, you know, the way that they corresponded with their advisors and their enemies and each other. It's hard to explain what they had to do because they were women. It was just how they utilized what options were available to them because they were women who ruled. And that came through very strongly without being overbearing. And together, at one point, between the two of them, they ruled a region of Europe that was larger than even like Constantine did. It's remarkable, and I had no idea. Another thing that is just amazing to me is that Shelley Puhak, the author of the book, is not a historian by profession. She's a poet. And now I've never read any of her poetry, but I absolutely will. It just made it so much more impressive. It was very readable and very, very well researched. And in the author's note, she does say that she, of course, had like her Latin transcribed for her, but she was the one that accessed all of the sources, and she was the one that did all of her own notes, and it was just spectacular. So I have to honestly, probably one of the best books I've read all year. Shadow of the Knife by Richard Eyre. This, I don't remember the date, but I do know that it is already out, published by a small independent press called Burning Chair Limited. This is an historical thriller set in Victorian London. So it takes place a couple of years after the murders of Jack the Ripper, and there are new murders that remind the public and the police of Jack the Ripper's murders. And in addition to that, the evidence, some evidence, including the bodies of the first two women, disappear. So that kind of suggests that there might be a cover-up involved in the investigation. So the main characters are, of course, the chief detective inspector and a surgeon. So it has kind of like a forensic / criminologist take on the crime solving. If you've read The Alienist, it's kind of similar in the, I don't know, I suppose in the way that they investigate the murders, but it's actually less about the investigation itself and more about the overall mystery in which they find themselves. So I did like the pacing, and I liked, for the most part, the plot. I liked the twist at the end. It was not entirely predictable, but by the end, it really could have gone only one of like two ways, but that I think was handled very well. All that being said, I didn't like it. It really could have benefited from editing, like a lot of editing. It was very, very wordy. It was unnecessarily long. And when I say word, I mean like every sentence. Like every sentence probably could have been cut in half. Also, I don't know if I want to say this because it sounds kind of like nitpicky, a little bitchy. But also maybe some fact checking. Not major things, but like things that it seemed to me that just kind of maybe were Googled, if at all, and then they got like an answer and that was good enough for them, but like no context was provided. The examples that come to mind, first is that the detective and the police commissioner, I think, smoke cigarettes. And yes, cigarettes existed in the late 19th century, but they were smoked by women and they were considered effeminate. So men would have smoked pipes, but a cigarette chain smoking police detective would not have happened. Well, it's not likely that it would have happened. Also, they communists and socialists, I want to say socialists, are suggested to be like toughs or rabble-rousers or like somebody that started a riot. Now, bear in mind again that this is 1891? I can't remember. But in any case, the British Party of Socialists did not start until 1920. So whereas, I mean, there's little doubt that there were probably communists and socialists in Victorian London, they would not have been organized in a group in such a way that police would be able to finger them as troublemakers. You know what I'm saying? So sure, it could be glossed over, but fact-checking errors or fact-based errors in that way kind of stack up. I read it though. I read it all the way to the end. I finished it and it was, I don't want to tell you not to read it. If you're into Victorian thrillers, try it. Read it. You have my blessing. It's just not something that I would recommend to a friend, and it's unlikely that I'll read anything else that the author has written. Okay. And the last arc that I read over the last few months, in fact, it's actually the last book I think I read, is How to Be Perfect, The Correct Answer to Every Moral Question by Michael Schur. This is going to be out also January of 2022, published by Simon & Schuster. If you don't know, Mike Schur is actually the creator of shows like The Good Place and Brooklyn Nine-Nine, and he co-created Parks and Rec and the adaptation of the American show The Office. And so I was very, very excited to be approved for this arc. as you might guess, if you've seen the television show The Good Place, and if you haven't, what on earth are you waiting for? Please stop watching right now and watch The Good Place. And even if you don't come back to this video, I will 100% understand, because it is very much worth it. So during the creation, during the writing of The Good Place, many philosophical, many ethical questions are generated. And so these questions are presented in a very casual and very humorous way, with very common sense and also very funny answers. And it's just as good as you would expect it to be. It's not a very long book. It is a book that can be picked up and put down, piecemeal, intermittently. It's broken down into 3 sections where the questions get kind of increasingly more difficult, more deep. But if you have just a base interest in philosophy and ethics, or if you've seen The Good Place and it kind of like sparked an interest, but you kind of wished that all of the ideas were kind of compressed and summarized and available in one place, then this book is perfect. It also, it might be a little late. I mean, you still have some time, but if you're actually looking for a very good Christmas gift, oh wait, it doesn't come out until January. Well, maybe you could buy it as a Christmas gift for 2022. But I wouldn't want to wait that long to read it. In any case, it's very good, and everyone should read it. Buy a copy and give it to everyone. Okay, so now that the arcs are done, when I was trying to narrow it down, when I was trying to decide what books to talk about, so I didn't have to like run down a list of 30 different books, these are the ones that stuck out. These are the ones that kind of stayed with me. So the first is Saturday Night, A Backstage History of Saturday Night Live by Doug Hill and Jeff Weingrad. Now, I have a handful of special interests, one of which that I've had since I was a young child, easily 8 years old, is comedy. Stand-up, sketch, and comedy writing, both the history of and the theory of. So I had bought this book for Kindle a while ago, and I just wanted to read this before it got too far down in my library list, and it just kind of like sat there unread forever. I was about halfway through this book when I realized a couple of things. One, that it is 570 pages long, which is not what I expected, and also that it is a second edition, and that the book was originally written in 1985. So it actually just covers the first 10 years of the show, which is primarily the original cast. That's fine. I'm not sure if I knew that when I bought it, but I definitely didn't when I started reading it. It was very, very good. There's interviews from cast, crew, and even Lorne Michaels to kind of build it, to put it together. Lorne Michaels, who in this book is not always portrayed in a positive light, which is good, which is something that makes me happy to see. The end had a kind of like a where are they now sort of section, which was kind of cool, but also kind of bittersweet, because again, it was written in 1985, so at that point, John Belushi had very recently died, but Gilda Radner, who died in 1989, I want to say, was still alive. So it was, again, kind of cool to see that, but also a little bit of a bummer. The Good House by Tananarive Due. This was very good, very long, but very good, but very long. I would say haunted house horror, but not quite. It's more than that. It was about the house, but it was about the land, family history, generational trauma. I can't say a lot about it, I don't think, because I'm bad at doing that without kind of spoiling stuff, and I missed out on it entirely, but it was actually pretty popular for a minute. I don't know if it was a year or two ago, and so there are many other people who would probably summarize it far better than I think I ever could. I would argue that there are two main characters, Angie, and her 16-year-old son, Corey. And you get both of their perspectives as this malevolent force like enters and affects their lives. And apparently there are some like mixed feelings about the ending of the novel. Some say that it kind of like undoes some of the like action from earlier in the book. I can see that argument, but personally, I liked it. I think that it was something that Angie deserved, and that's basically all I'll say about that. But if you've read it and you have an opinion on the ending of The Good House, let me know what you think. Shutter Island by Dennis Lehane. This is a thriller that takes place on an island that, according to the novel, was used as a prison, I think, during the Civil War. But in the present of the book, which is 1954, it's used as a hospital for the criminally insane. And so a U.S. Marshal is called to investigate the disappearance of one of the female patients, which is, of course, troubling and very suspicious because not only is it very well guarded, it's an island, as the name implies. And so as the Marshal gets deeper into the case, he finds what he considers to be evidence for like human experiments and mind control and abuses and things like that. So it just kind of becomes like a much more like oppressive mystery. And also he starts to kind of lose it a little bit himself. It is a little tropey, but I will forgive that because it was written in the early 2000s. I can't remember when. I want to say 2004, the early 2000s. So it might not necessarily have been as tropey at that time. Also, a movie of Shutter Island was made. Came out in like 2010, starring Leonardo DiCaprio. And I don't know how that was not on my radar. I think it might have been kind of at the tail end of the time when I, and I guess everybody else, was kind of obsessed with Leonardo DiCaprio. I was gonna watch it and make like a video out of it, but for obvious reasons, I couldn't really find myself up to doing something with that many steps. So I didn't. Maybe some other time. Maybe I'll reread it and watch the movie or make like a series out of that or something. But it's a good book, and if you're looking for something that is quick yet thrilling, it like reads like a mass market paperback, but it's actually very, very good. Much like, who's that guy I like? Thomas Harris, who writes the Hannibal Lecter series. For me, in my opinion, it reads very much like a mass market paperback, but it is very engaging and easy to read. Come Closer by Sarah Gran. This is a relatively short demon possession story, and I can say with 100% certainty that I have not read a lot of demon possession novels, and I know that I have not read enough. Uh-oh, somebody's awake now. Okay, bye. And I feel like that is a genre or a subgenre that I would like to get into a little more, but I don't know what novels exist about demon possession or possession horror stories. Anyway, it's very, very good. I think what I like the most, or the best aspect of this book, is that in the beginning, it reads very literary. It seems like a book about a couple who is, a husband and wife who are just kind of bored and unhappy in their marriage. And then, for reasons, demonic possession. As I said, it's very short, but it's really engaging, and you don't have to wait very long for the climax of the book. And the history, that it integrates is also very interesting to me. I'm not going to say a whole lot more about it because, again, short, but very, very good. Strong recommend. Dark Currents by Doug Burgess. Actually, hang on a second. Dark Currents by Doug Burgess. I have a book cart in my room, but all of my other books are in storage. So for the foreseeable, not a lot of books that I read will actually be physical copies. This is the only one, I think the only actual physical book that I've read in the last 3 months. I had never even heard of this book before I bought it. I bought this at Barnes & Noble. It was the half off of a buy one, get one half off special on like a table in the front. And it looked real good, so I got it. And I was not mistaken. It was fantastic. Okay, so it is a kind of like a thriller mystery. Main character's name is Daniel. Daniel has to return home to a small Rhode Island town where he grew up because his grandmother may potentially be the only witness to a possible murder, but unfortunately his grandmother has Alzheimer's. Also, because it is a small town, he doesn't really want to go back. He's trans. Daniel is trans, and it's just something that he doesn't want to deal with, but his grandmother needs him, and he also very recently lost his job, so he goes back. Oh, also, Daniel's childhood or high school sweetheart is also the sheriff of this small town. That is also a thing. But there are a lot of twists and turns, a lot of mysteries inside mysteries. The end was not anticipated, which is something that, of course, I always appreciate in something that has a mystery aspect. I've got absolutely no complaints. I have this weird thing where, like, if I pick up a book in a certain circumstance or a certain type of day or for a certain reason, that I like to keep to that circumstance. So if I am reading a book at night before going to bed, that is a bedtime book, and I will not read it when I have free time. I will not read it during the afternoon because I started the book at night. There was also a book that I was only reading in the bathtub, which I take maybe a bath, like a leisurely nice hot bath. I only do that like once every month or two, so this book is as of yet unread because I don't take enough baths. So that was not the book's fault, but it did take me a minute to get through it because it was a book that I was reading at night. Not necessarily the best book to read if you're trying to unwind, but when I was about, I want to say three quarters of the way through, I literally wouldn't put it down. So if that's any kind of endorsement, you can take that. The book was so good that I read it when I shouldn't have been reading it in my own head based on my own weird rules. Also, I was reading this book at the same time I was watching Midnight Mass. And dang, guys, that was spectacular. I think that I now really, really love New England coastal settings, especially if they are mystery or horror. So if you know of any, if you have any recommendations for me, please, please, please leave them in the comments, just as long as you do not say Stephen King. Okay, and we are almost done. One of the last books that I read over the last few months is The Lost Queen by Sidney Pike. So good. Okay, where to start? So this is historical fiction, and this one was a bit of a beast. It was a long book, but I absolutely loved every second of it. It draws on Welsh and Scottish history and also Arthurian legend. It is not about Arthur, though, but about Merlin. So the man who would become Merlin in the book is named Lilican, and he had a twin sister named Langareth, and she became a on the go. And she became a queen in Scotland in the 6th century. And so the book is mostly about her. And her life, and her relationship with her brother, but also the sacrifices that she has to make because she wants to be, educated like him. She wants to be free like him. She wants to learn mysteries like him. She can't. She has to resolve herself to becoming a queen, which is not a terrible sacrifice if you live in Scotland in the early Middle Ages. It's compared to Outlander in the Mists of Avalon. Outlander makes no sense to me. I have read both. There is virtually no similarity between the two, like, at all. Is it because it's medieval? Is it because it's Scottish? Because let me tell you, like 6th century Scotland and like 18th century Scotland are worlds apart. So I don't understand the similarity at all. That said, it does have very, very strong Mists of Avalon vibes. If you've read the Mists of Avalon, also read that. Very good. Again, long, but worth it. And the next book in the trilogy, it is a trilogy, I believe it's called The Forgotten Kingdom. I have not yet read, but I do have it saved. And I would like to read that pretty soon, but as I said, they are kind of long, and I think I might have to put that off if I'm looking to meet my Goodreads goal. Not that I, again, need to meet my Goodreads goal or that I'll feel bad if I don't, but a challenge is a challenge, and if I can meet the goal, I would definitely like to do it. But at this point, again, at the beginning of December, I am that's a thing. That is, as of right now, I am, I think, 9 books behind. I have 20 to go. So basically, my goal for 2021 was 140 books. I am currently at 120. So I guess we'll see. What that does mean is that I don't think it's a great idea to be reading any 600 to 700 page books before the end of December. But that is it. Thank you. If you've made it this far, thank you very much. Thank you in general for your patience. I've been having a time. Mental health, not great. But some of my medication was adjusted about a month ago, and then another prescription was adjusted for me just a week ago, and I'm definitely noticing a difference, definitely noticing an improvement. So hopefully just my day-to-day will be better, so I can kind of keep to, commitments that I make, mostly to myself, because I don't really make videos for anyone but me at this point. So I'm feeling better, ending the year strong, hopefully starting the new year even stronger. And like I said, I do have plans for the month of December, so fingers crossed that on the heels of making one video, I can just kind of launch into doing something else. Is there anything else I wanted to say? What do you think about this setup? Like my location, right? Has that drawer been open the whole time? Not that it does anything now, but what do you think? Is this a good setup? I don't really know where else there is to go. I'm in the living room on the first floor. A lot of windows. Lots of noises from the inside and outside, though, but I honestly don't think that can be helped much, so I guess we'll see. Maybe I'll try it again. Maybe I'll hunt around and see if I can find a more well-lit place. My room's not very big, and even if I could find a nice little spot and set up a little background, because again, I don't have any books, I don't have any shelves in there. It's not well lit. The window in that room faces basically the wall of the building next door. And so it does not get, it gets virtually no light during the day. So I don't even think that's going to work. Even if it might be the quietest place on this first floor. And there are other people living in the second unit upstairs. This is actually, I don't know if I talked about this house. Did I talk about this house? This is we live in a duplex. We live in a duplex that we're going to convert into a triplex. But renovations aren't going to begin until spring. So in the interim, we have 2 folks staying in the unit upstairs, which is the walking that you heard. Which, I mean, again, the way that sound travels in this place, it's unavoidable. I don't mind. Hopefully, you don't mind either. But yeah, I think that's it. So I will wish that it was insulated a little better against sound. But again, that's just something I'm going to have to figure out, I guess. So anyway, thank you again for watching, and like and subscribe if you enjoy the controlled chaos that I emanate. And I will see you soon, hopefully soon, in my next video. Bye.